It's time for your daily LSU baseball update with Musso at the box. Now, Matt Musso.
Off and running. Welcome in another edition of Musso at the box. LSU, they defeat Alabama 2 out of 3 games, winning Thursday night 11-6, come from behind fashion, winning game number 2 on Friday 4-3 behind the stellar pitching outings from Anthony Ianson and Zach Cowan. And then they drop the final game of the series on Saturday 7-4. And that one was just really ugly, and they didn't really do much right in that ball game at all. There are plenty of themes that I want to get into from this weekend, some good, some bad. Most of them point to a larger concern, we'll call it, for LSU at this point in the schedule, with 4 SEC weeks remaining, 3 of them against really, really good baseball teams. And there are some things that LSU needs to kick into high gear rather quickly. And I'll offer a few thoughts on how I think they can do that. But ultimately, we will as well look back at the weekend in that same context. We're presented by Gotlit Light Installers, gotlitlights.com. Smash the like button, please, if you have not already. Get subscribed to the YouTube channel if you have not already. And on your favorite podcast app, just search Musso at the box. And let's go ahead and get started. Some thoughts, brief thoughts on games 1 and 2, because we've recapped those in depth already immediately after the game, but some brief thoughts there. I thought Thursday night, Cade Anderson got off to a fantastic start, and things got away from him in that 6th inning with 2 outs. I mean, the first 5 2/3 innings were awesome, and once he got to 2 outs in the 6th, it got away from him. The home runs are concerning. He's given up 12 of them on the year now. You have to keep the ball in the ballpark. But in that same vein, 3 out of the 4 he gave up were solo. And solo homers aren't going to beat you. So when there was traffic on the bases, he was able to keep the ball in the park. That is encouraging, except for the second homer that Snell hit. Other than that, Anderson in the first 5 2/3 innings of that game was awesome. He didn't walk anybody. He struck out 10. He had a great feel for multiple pitches. With 2 outs in the 6th, he fell behind, and bad things happen when you do that. But Anderson kept you in the ball game. He gave you a chance to win the ball game, and that's where your offense comes in. Early in that game, man, you looked really bad. It looked like a complete continuation from the Auburn series. But late in that game, you stayed the course, and you took advantage of some mistakes. You got a great spark off the bench with Pearson and Larson, and that ignited the rest of your lineup, to where Stephen Milam hits the home run. You had a home run from Ethan Fry later in the game, a single from him as well. It ignited the rest of your group. That was a very high character win from LSU. And what you wanted to see was, okay, now can they carry that over into game 2? Your offense finally exploded there. You scored 10 runs in the final 3 innings. You go forward to Saturday, and LSU, you see the early response. LSU collects 3 hits with runners in scoring position. 4 hits with runners in scoring position through the first 4 innings. You put up 4 runs in those first 4 innings, and you have the early lead. Ianson struggles early in that first. There's 33 pitches, loads the bases, gets out of it. He fought his ass off. He was absolutely phenomenal, I thought, after that first inning. He worked himself into a little trouble, struck out LeBron in the 4th. That was the biggest pitch of the game to that point. It was the biggest out that Anthony Ianson recorded in the game to that point, even surpassing the bases loaded strikeout in the first. And without his best stuff, he battled, gave you 115 pitches in 6 innings and only 1 earned run, like the great ones do when they don't have their best stuff. So he was great. And at that point, you got a 4-1 lead. You're feeling really good. You've gotten into Alabama's bullpen, which you feasted on Thursday night. And we had given you the numbers heading into that weekend. 30 innings pitched, 34 hits, 18 earned runs, just 27 strikeouts for Bama's bullpen in their last 6 SEC games heading into this weekend. And man, you made that stand up in game 1. Now, here you are in the 5th inning and you're into their bullpen in game 2. You're feeling great. And that's when LSU's offense went back into a shell. But Zach Cowan out of the bullpen gets you the final 9 outs. Wasn't without a little bit of stress, but Zach Cowan's great, and he gets you the final 9 outs, and you win that ball game. And you look back at the series, and you go, man, it hasn't been pretty, but without your best stuff, you've won 2 games against the top 15 team, and you've done it in 2 different ways, and that will always be encouraging. You had the rally and the comeback and slugged your way to win in game 1. You started hot offensively in game 2, went into a shell, but your pitching made it hold up. That is the mark of a good team. And you went into game 3 feeling good and having a great chance to sweep because of what you had left in the bullpen. And then game 3 was a total wet blanket and very discouraging. Because I'll get to the mound, but first and foremost, LSU never mounted any real threat in that ball game offensively. Jake Brown provided you a great spark off the bench. Do you realize Jake Brown saw 2 pitches in that ball game? He had 2 at-bats. He saw 2 pitches. He went 2 for 2, a home run, a triple. He drove in 3 runs on 2 pitches. We'll come back to that. So again, a great spark off the bench. But you really never mounted a real threat. You were 0 for 6 with runners in scoring position. And you never really felt in the game from an offensive standpoint. From a pitching standpoint, Chase Shores doesn't get the start, which y'all know from earlier in the week, or I should say this point last week, I'm okay with. I said, hey, it's time. It's probably time to make that move. I gave you William Schmidt, who we'll get to with his outing on Saturday, because that was very disappointing in and of itself. They go Connor Ware. That was a bit of a head-scratching decision for me because of the inconsistency that you've seen from Connor Ware, but I'll be damned. He was pretty darn good that first trip through the lineup. He walks Fowler to start the 3rd inning, and that was it. He was out of the game. So very clearly what they were doing is that's a 1 trip through the lineup deal for him. Okay, can you get the lefty at the top of the order? And then we're going to Chase Shores. You're serving as an opener, and I hate that. There are certain times I will be okay using an opener. This year's LSU team is not one of those because you have not been consistent enough through your staff to use an opener. Especially if the first arm you're going to out of the pen is a established starter like Chase Shores, who has had such inconsistencies throughout the year. You've seen guys put together really nice seasons. Outside of Cowan and Evans. Maverick Rizzi, y'all, has put together a really nice season. He's got a sub-4 ERA on the year. It might even be sub-3.5 at this point on the year. 3.63. So he's approaching that on the year. Even in SEC play, it's sub-4.5. That guy's put together a really nice season in his freshman year. He is really starting to turn the corner and become consistent, and I thought he battled his ass off in game 3 in the biggest moment of his career so far. That, getting out of that bases loaded jam and doing it against that, Bonamalo and Snell, like those guys, having to face those guys and getting out of it, that's going to do nothing but give Maverick Rizzi confidence. So I love that. And he's put together a really solid season. I think Jaden Newt, for the most part, has been pretty consistent. I mean, that's a guy with a sub-4 ERA. He's had a few stinkers in there. Like the outing against Nichols wasn't great, but he's been fairly consistent for you. That's really all I've got. Jacob Myers is continuing to put up zeros right now. It's never pretty. And he definitely is earning more time in SEC play. You saw him twice this weekend. He threw up a couple zeros each time. Wasn't the prettiest. But, I mean, he certainly looks like he's starting to turn the corner. But after that, Connor Binge has been the definition of inconsistency. Connor Ware has been very inconsistent. William Schmidt has been very inconsistent. You can't use an opener when you're that inconsistent. LSU's pitching is good enough to win. Don't misunderstand me. They clearly are. I think Nate Yeski's done a very nice job bringing along guys like Maverick Rizzi and even Jacob Myers, where you can count on them more now in conference play. The recovery and Jaden Newt really getting extending innings this year, that has been very good. Obviously, what they've done with Kason Evans and his development, and Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson over the course of the season, like all of those things are great. But there are enough guys in there where, yeah, you can piece it together. But what you don't have the luxury of doing is piecing it together in a game number 3, because at that point in the weekend, you are just down to the, I don't want to call it the bottom of your bullpen, but you're down to your more inconsistent arms. And all it takes when using an opener is one guy after him to go in there and not have his best stuff. That was Chase Shores. He gave up 4 runs. And with the way your offense was going, starting in the 5th inning on Saturday, the 5th inning on Friday, through the game on Saturday, the game was done at that point. Like, it felt insurmountable. That is not a path to victory for this LSU team in game number 3. Game number 3 this weekend reminded me of game 3s we saw a year ago. No, you didn't get run ruled, but you never really felt like you were in that ball game. Even after Brown's homer to cut it to 2. Because still to that point, you hadn't mounted a real offensive threat. You know, early in the game, you had a couple runners on. In the first with 2 outs, you needed a base hit. You couldn't get it. In the second inning, you put 2 more runners on and you couldn't get them home. And after that, it wasn't there. So what is LSU's answer in game number 3 right now? I don't know. I don't have a good answer for it. If you want to start Connor Ware, go ahead. But let him extend a little bit. This one trip through the lineup deal, that isn't going to get it done. Not on Sunday, not when you have your more inconsistent arms left. You saved Kason Evans. You took him out at 35 pitches to hopefully use him again in the weekend. You never did. You never used him again. So I kind of just dumped on him a lot there. That wasn't my intention. The weekend is a success overall. You're 12-6. Like, you're going, you are on pace. But, man, game 3 was just very discouraging because you didn't really do anything well. And you had a great opportunity to sweep that weekend and get your cushion back. And you let it slip away because you weren't good enough on the mound and you weren't nearly good enough at the plate. A couple of things that really disappointed me on the mound. One is William Schmidt. Man, you know what? It didn't start bad. I mean, Schmidt comes in, he gets the 2 outs, he has the wild pitch, but he comes in the 8th and gets the 2 outs that he needs. And then in the 9th, he just can't find the zone. I mean, the second batter of that inning, he walks on 4 pitches. And it ends up being more balls than strikes, and he's out of the game. And then Newt comes in, he hangs a 0, but where the bit of that inconsistency, although I think he's put together a really nice year, the bit of that inconsistency is he lets the 2 inherited runners score. And that's just ultimately what you can't do. But man, it really looked like William Schmidt was turning a corner. Ultimately, that outing was disappointing. Because man, he finally got another opportunity to get back in the SEC, and what plagued him was walks, and that's what's plagued him the entire time in conference play. You don't believe me? Here's William Schmidt's line in conference play. He's had 3 appearances. He's given up 3 hits. But in 2 innings, and 3 hits in 2 innings isn't great. But in 2 innings, he has walked 8 and struck out 1. Like, that is the deal. He can't consistently get ahead in conference play. And because of that, he's got an ERA of 22.5, and he just cannot be counted on as a contributor in SEC play right now. The comparisons to Cade Anderson are apt. And I hope he follows a similar path where late in the year in the SEC tournament and postseason is really where you started to see Anderson take the step towards what he's been this year. But for right now, William Schmidt just can't be counted on as a contributor for this team in conference play until he shows otherwise. I fear the same is for Chase Shores. And man, that's really disappointing. You know, Shores had a little bit more swing and miss in his stuff this weekend, but not enough because he still gave up 4 hits and 4 earned runs. He punched out 5. That was great to see. But it just still wasn't enough. And it's in certain situations that he doesn't get the swing and miss when there's traffic on the base paths. You're at a crossroads there now, and you really need to figure out the guys that you know you can count on, and you figure it out fast. Then you get into the offense. And before I do that, let me remind you about Gauntlet Lights, Gauntlet Lights installers, GauntletLights.com. Let them go on the offensive for you when you need to illuminate your landscape and your outdoor area, whether it's your backyard patio or your pool or your front yard and your flower beds. Gauntlet Light Installers. Again, they do all the work. And I mean all the work. Install, maintenance. In the case of the Christmas lights or the temporary outdoor lighting, tear down and storage. All you do is you go to Derek and his team, you get the quote, it works for you, and you say, okay, here's what I want. This is my idea. This is my vision. They take that and they make it a reality to make your outdoor landscape, your home perfect. Gauntlet Light Installers, GauntletLights.com. Offense for LSU. You know, after the Auburn weekend, I heard and saw a lot of people use the word inconsistent to describe LSU's offense. And in the case of the Auburn weekend, I could not disagree with that more. LSU wasn't inconsistent on offense against Auburn. LSU was bad on offense against Auburn. Like, there's no in between. They were not good. What you saw this weekend from LSU's offense is the definition of inconsistency, where you start out game 1 cold, bad, and then you come on strong at the end of game 1. And then that carries over early into game 2. And then you go into a hole in the end of game 2. And then you just don't mount threats really in game 3. That is the definition of inconsistency. And where it's really coming from right now is runners in scoring position. LSU isn't struggling getting guys on base. Y'all, through the first 2 games of this weekend, LSU scored 14 runs on 25 hits. You'll take that every time through the first 2 games of a weekend. LSU, in game number 1, left 8 on base. They left 12 on base in game 2. But overall on the weekend, LSU hit 189 with runners in scoring position. And that is flat out not good enough. But that doesn't tell the whole story. Because at points in that weekend, you were much better than 189 with runners in scoring position. And that stretch was from the 6th inning on Thursday through the 4th inning on Friday. In that stretch, LSU hit 300 with runners in scoring position. And in that stretch, that's where you scored 13 of your 14 runs. We complicate this game of baseball so much when it really is quite simple. You hit with runners in scoring position, you win games. And it wasn't always hits that drove those in. LSU, you manufactured runs as well. Jake Brown had a squeeze bunt, perfectly executed late in the game on Friday night. On Thursday night. But in that stretch, the 6th inning on Thursday through the 4th inning on Friday, LSU at 300 with runners in scoring position and scored 13 of the 14 runs that they scored in the first 2 games. And you left a lot more out there. 300 is a good number with runners in scoring position. It's not a great number. You'd rather be around, 360, 384 in that realm. If you can go higher, go higher. But 300 is a good number. And that just further highlights the inconsistency of this team offensively this weekend, not this year, this weekend. So how do you fix it? Because here's the thing. There were guys who were awesome this weekend. Chris Stanfield hit 500. He was 5 for 10. Set you up, started rally after rally for you in that stretch from the 6th inning on. Even when you scored your first run on Thursday in the 3rd inning, he let it off with a double. Danny Dickinson also hit 500. He was 7 for 14. All of them were singles. He was awesome all weekend. Michael Braswell hit 375 and is hitting 324 in conference play. That competition is over. Michael Braswell should be your starting third baseman for the rest of the conference season and the rest of the season. That is done. He is hitting 324 in SEC play, and right now you are struggling. He should be in the lineup every day. He's the better glove, and if he's going to put up those numbers in conference play, play him every time. So why is the rest of this LSU offense struggling? Obviously, we know what Jared Jones has been going through. Jared Jones was 1 for 13 against Auburn, struck out 6 times. Jared Jones against Alabama had 2 hits over the weekend. And yet it was a better weekend than he had against Auburn. He had the homer, the RBI double. He drew a few walks as well. But he also had 2 hits and punched out far too much. 3 hits from Jared Jones over the course of 2 weekends in league play isn't good enough. That's not going to cut it. He needs to pick it up. And I feel like it's not far off because, again, he took better at bats against Alabama than he did against Auburn. In certain cases. There were some stinkers in there too. Let me be clear. I'm not saying every at bat was good, but there were better ones. But y'all, Jared Jones in conference play is tied for second on this team in RBI with 15. Stephen Milam has to get it going for LSU. Stephen Milam on the year is hitting 306. And he's had some really big swings. Really big swings. Like the 3-run homer he had against Mississippi State that gave you the lead, the 3-run homer he had against Alabama that gave you, he's took big swings. But in conference play, Stephen Milam is hitting 200. Likewise, he's tied for second in RBI with 15. That's first and foremost why you need to get Jones and Milam going in SEC play. Because even in their struggles, they're driving in your runs. So if you get them hitting at a higher clip, you're going to score more runs, just naturally. But those two guys have to get it going in SEC play. And I'll give you one more who needs to break out of the funk, and it's Luis Hernandez. That is hurting LSU's offense, not having Hernandez hitting at the clip that he was, because that is a guy who was an X factor for you. He really was for the first 4 weeks of SEC play. Heading into that Auburn series, Luis Hernandez was hitting 340 in SEC play and had numerous big swings for you at the bottom of the order, whether it was the 3 doubles he had against Oklahoma, whether it was the go-ahead game-winning home run against Mississippi State, the go-ahead home run against Texas, the tying home run against Missouri. Like, it was big swings and big moments. A lot of extra base hits. Now he's down to 271 in conference play, which isn't a bad number. But when you look, he's fallen from 340 to 271 in 2 weeks. That's a guy that has to get it going for you again. And then the other thing, Jake Brown needs to be in the lineup every day. I'm tired of having this conversation. LSU needs to settle on their guys now. The platoon is awesome, and the guys handled it great. And you saw that again this weekend with a guy like Larson being ready to come off the bench and hit the 3-run homer to get you back in the game and spark your offense. And the same thing for Pearson. He preceded that homer with a pinch hit single. That's great. But when your offense is struggling the way that it is, the platoon needs to end. You need to settle on your guys. Because I'm going to tell you right now, the biggest concern I have for this team is one that I did not think I would have, and it is the offense at this point in time. Because you have pitched, even with all your inconsistencies on the mound, you have pitched well enough to win and be a championship team when you just look at numbers and the way LSU has structured this staff. You are there pitching-wise. Would you like more consistency? Sure. But the 2023 team had plenty of inconsistencies on the pitching staff, and they hit their stride at the right time, and they won a natty because they were talented enough, and the numbers bore that out. And this team has that capability on the mound, and I will not argue with anybody over that because it's just inarguable when you really look at it. But through all those inconsistencies on the mound, your offense had been the strength of this team up until this stretch, and that is concerning. Would I rather you slump right now than in the postseason? Absolutely. But your postseason life, I don't want to say that. Not your postseason life. LSU has 12 wins in conference play. Let me totally backtrack on that. You need one more win in conference play, and you're getting in the postseason. LSU's postseason goals, what you're really playing for, hosting, national seed top 8, that hangs in the balance the next 3 weeks when you face Tennessee at home, who is better than you, by the way. And then you go on the road to A&M, who is back. Them taking that win, that series at Arkansas, showed me everything I needed to see. That team will be playing for something massive when you go there, and they are hitting the baseball like we all expected them to. And then you welcome in Arkansas. These next 3 weeks, what you are set to achieve in the postseason hangs in the balance. You have to get these guys going. So I want to see Jake Brown in the lineup every day because that guy's hitting over 300 in conference play. He, by the way, is 3rd in RBI. You're looking to drive in runs. You're looking for runner action with runners in scoring position. Jake Brown's providing that. Play him. I don't care if he DHs. I don't care if he plays right field. I don't care if he plays first. But put him in the lineup every day. This is absurd to me that we're still having this conversation. And you know what? I'll punctuate this conversation the way I have every time. They're not going to do it. Jay's going to continue to platoon. And it's going to drive me nuts. Michael Braswell, Jake Brown, line up every day. And you need to get Milam, Jones, and Hernandez back going. And if you do that, you're back. It's real simple to say. I can point to that, and it's just real easy. It's a lot harder to do. One thing I know for sure, they'll put in the work. Jay is a relentless worker, and he's a great hitting coach. But at some point, the guys also have to go out there and execute what is being presented to them and what is being coached to them. And right now, LSU is not doing that well enough at the plate. They're expanding the zone still. They're not staying in character for an entire game. And that, along with, I think, you're not pressing the right buttons at a high enough clip anymore, has led to this offensive slump and inconsistency at this point in the season. And it needs to change in a hurry because these next 3 weeks are so massive for LSU. They will determine if and how long you're playing postseason ball at home. This stretch was always going to define that, and right now this is a very uncomfortable spot to be in heading into that stretch. They've responded pretty well all year. This is when they really need to do it. All right, that's going to wrap it up. Y'all smash the like button. Please get subscribed. Follow on social media, podcast app, and YouTube subscribe. Smash the like I said. Go to gotlitlights.com. Trust me, work with Derek and his team, and be here next time for more on Musso at the Box.